It's the real deal. It's a real missile out there. It wasn't the original. All the originals were destroyed or used to launch satellites. This was the missile we all trained on. It never had propellant. It never had a warhead, so it's safe to be around. The biggest missile America ever built. It has the biggest warhead we ever put on a missile. 600 times more powerful than the bombs we dropped on Japan in World War II. The whole point of this thing, as odd as this may sound, was peace. Peace through deterrence. We're not a first-strike weapon. We promised the Soviets we would only launch it if they launched against us. We weren't even necessarily built to fight World War III. We were built to scare the Soviets into starting World War. All right, folks, if anybody's wondering about these terrace hills you see down here, those are the copper mines. They have nothing to do with us. That mine was 8 miles away when they built it. There was no town here either. The Air Force would not build these near people. Nobody in their right mind would build a town next to this thing. Soviets had a 20 megaton bomb aimed at us. About a year after the silo went in, a town went up. Why? We had no idea what these were. The Soviets knew, but Americans had no clue. Half the people down here still don't know what this thing is. The building wasn't here when we were operational. All you would have seen was the fence, the telephone poles, the big antenna in the parking lot, and the big cage thing over there. That's the silo closure door. 760 tons of concrete, of steel filled with concrete. It sits over the top and protects that missile from a nearby detonation. Even a bomb that lands out of that gypsum mine on that mountain 50 miles away is going to destroy everything you can see from as far as you can see, except that big door. Security. There were no cameras up here. And security forces were only come if we needed them or called them. What we had were these silver poles with those scoops on them. We call it our tipsy. It's a Doppler radar. You just put out a radio beam between the scoops. If you break the beam, we get an alarm, we call security. There's 8 of them watching the door. There's 2 of them watching our air conditioner. That air conditioner wasn't here either. Just an air shaft with an open grate. That's all the breathable air we had. We didn't want the enemy throwing something in there trying to take us out. The other part of the security is the way we enter. It takes 4 phone calls to gain access to the silo. The first one from that blue box is that gate. Hi, we're here. Let us in. They open the gate, we drive in, park the truck, make our way to the bottom of the stairway, make our second phone call. If you can't do it in 3 minutes, you are not getting in. We drove out here. We could have been infiltrated, attacked. Somebody could have a gun to our head. They didn't want us to have to give a distress code. So we would just drag our feet, slow down a little bit, slow walking. Takes more than 3 minutes. The bad guys aren't getting in. Help is on the way. Once we're through that door, we're in this cage called the entrapment area. There, the commander reads off a code they gave us, lights it on fire, throws it in that can on the wall and burns it. And then they let us through down to the bottom where we're going to make our 4th and final phone call. Come on down. I told you about is going to destroy this whole area. It's our way in and it's our way out. Where you guys are in the hardened part of the structure, the walls are 4 feet thick, ceilings and floors are 5 feet thick. Whole thing's covered in a 1/4 inch of battleship grade steel. The doors are 1 foot thick. Steel I-beams double welded together. A milled surface on the door, the frame, a neoprene seal. Each door weighs 3 tons or 6,000 pounds. When these doors are closed, and these doors are always closed, it's virtually airtight in here. This is going to protect the crew in the complex from that near miss. It's going to protect us from the radiation, the heat wave, the blast wave, and the electromagnetic pulse. That's a pulse of energy. It shoots out at the speed of light. It's going to fry anything that has an electronic chip in it, never to work again. Television, telephone, electricity, automobiles, all gone. Back in the dark ages if this ever happened. This is going to protect us all from that, as long as that bomb the Soviets have aimed at us misses us by more than a mile. If they could drop it within a mile of this spot, we'll be instantly vaporized. We wouldn't even know what happened. It'd just be a bunch of free-floating molecules. Big hole in the ground. I'll explain why a mile is a number as we go. So, we made all our phone calls. We're outside this door. There's 4 of them. Blast door 6, blast door 7, protect us from that near miss. Blast door 8 and blast door 9 in there, protect us from our own missiles. Either a mishap or the launch itself. So we make our fourth and final phone call from this phone. We hit this button on the wall, just like this one, and someone in the control center hits the button, and the 4 pins that lock the door will be tracked. And then we just manually open up and close the doors. They're electronically paired. Only one door can be opened at a time. Usually up to the youngest guy on the crew gets to open and close the doors for everybody else. And then we just travel through. Come on in. All right, you want to be my commander? Sit. Move over, folks. You can come up here. We got everybody in here? Just about. All right. Can everyone see? All right, we're in a 3-story building. It's round on the top, it's flat on the bottom, and that's to deflect an overhead blast away. You guys can come up here if you want, so everyone can see. The top floor of this building is the crew's quarters. There's nothing fancy up there. A couple bunk beds, a kitchenette, and a bathroom. Downstairs is the equipment bay. That's where all our power communication lines come through. This is launch control. This is where we spend most of our day. This is where we launch the missile from. The last thing we have to worry about down here is the shock wave. This detonation is going to create this unimaginable earthquake. It's going to make the land above our heads look like waves on the ocean. We need to withstand that. Everything critical to launching this missile, the missile, the people, and all the equipment is all on shock absorbers or springs. You're going to see them everywhere down here, including all 3 floors of this building. You cross the bridge to get in here. We're not attached to the wall. We're hanging here by 8 of these giant springs you see around the room. Excuse me. So if that shock wave hits, the ground around us in the shell of the building can all move 1.5 feet up and down and 1 foot side to side without us feeling anything down here. Just hang here. There's 4 people on the crew. We're here for the next 24 hours. That's our shift. We call it an alert. When I was stationed here, it was men only. This was combat duty. Women weren't allowed to do combat until 1978. Titan was the first program they picked. Right now, the Minutemen missiles is about 50-50 men and women. Our job down here for the next 24 hours is to maintain the equipment, troubleshoot any problems, decode any secret messages. We're here to keep this in a state of readiness. This missile has to be ready to go every second of every day. In case the Soviets launch a strike against us, we have to be able to retaliate. That's our job. First person on the crew is the commander. You're going to be a captain in the U.S. Air Force. You're responsible for us, the complex, and the missiles. You have the weight of the world on your shoulders, Captain. If that message ever came through to launch this thing, it's up to the captain to make sure we go through with it and launch. Now, we went through extensive psychological testing on a weekly basis, meeting with the psychiatrist, to make sure the 4 people in this room are stable enough to be here and willing enough to be here. But there were always doubts. So 2 of us carried sidearms. In case one of us decided to try to stop the others from launching, we would eliminate that crew member. Carry on with what we're supposed to do. That's your job, Captain. You're the deputy commander. You're going to be a lieutenant in the Air Force. You're learning to be a commander. You're in charge of all our radios. There's 4 radios connected to 7 antennas you'll see when you're walking around up there. If a problem arises, it's up to us to figure out what went wrong, troubleshoot. Then the deputy calls the base. Over at Davis Monthan Air Force Base, there were 450 dedicated maintenance people, specialized in all aspects of these 18 silos. They would fly them out here if necessary, keep us in a state of readiness. You need to keep track of them. You're the safety officer. We have to make sure if they have an accident, we know what's going on, or if we're ordered to launch, we got to get them back in here. You can't launch, they won't survive it out there. You're also in charge of the clock. No wires going to this clock. Electric clocks were not reliable enough for our needs down here. It's an 8-day wind-up chronometer. It's been running since 1963. The deputy on duty every Sunday morning would wind that clock, and then twice a day, every day, this clock is synchronized with the atomic clock in Boulder, Colorado. Your clock, Lieutenant, can never be more than 1 second off. This is your launch clock. Your launch clock is set to Zulu time. Zulu time is 7 hours ahead of our local time or our lunch clock. Anybody know what Zulu time is? Greenwich Mean Time, the zero meridian, where the time zone starts. We use it, our allies use it, space station uses it. It avoids confusion during military operations. Deputy here doesn't have to pick up a phone and go AM, PM, daylight saving time. We did away with that. Right now, our time is 7:15 at night, or in Zulu time, 1915 hours. 1915 hours here, China, Russia, Australia, you name it, everybody knows what time it is. No more confusion. The last two members of the crew are the enlisted people, the workers down here, the most technically trained people down here. I went to school twice as long as you, Captain. I had to learn all aspects of that missile out there. The first person, missile facility technician. Just what it sounds like. They take care of the facilities. It's their job to keep this place at 100% of the time. There's 9 floors out there, jam-packed with anything you think a missile could need. Hydraulics, pneumatics, sewage, water, air conditioning, power. They're going to take care of all that stuff. They're going to keep us alive. They're going to keep that missile alive. That's their job. They can monitor most of that stuff from right here. The last crew member is the BMAT, Ballistic Missile Analyst Technician, the computer guy down here, the electronic technician. That's what I did. My job is to make sure this thing launches, whatever that means. I have to make sure it goes. I'm in charge of all the electronics, all the launch equipment, the missile itself, the guidance system, and the warhead. Not like having an old car in the garage. You can start it up once in a while and make sure it's going to work when you need it. If I started this, I started World War III. You can't have that. But I can test everything else on that missile. All my electronics, I can gimbal my engine. I can even open the 760-ton door. I can make sure everything's in working order in case we ever get the call for it. Now a couple of the panels. This is the annunciator panel. You'll hear it in a couple minutes. That's connected to the Tipsies, the Doppler radar. If this thing goes off, it's up to cross one of our beams. We're not going out there ourselves. We're sealed in here. We're not going to open that door, let the enemy in here. We call security. They're never more than 20 minutes away. A couple people show up with their M16s, see what's going on up there. In the 20 years, all these 18 silos were active. They never found an attacker, an intruder, or even a human being. There's always just a big bird or rabbit or some kind of animal up there. The thing became a nuisance after a while, actually. This thing is the fail-safe. Every nuclear weapon has some sort of a fail-safe. On the Titan program, it's called our butterfly control valve lock. It's just a combination lock. In case of an inadvertent launch, a crew that was infiltrated, or a crew that went crazy, this is going to keep us from launching this missile. That's connected to the butterfly valves. There's 4 of these on the first stage engine. They're just going to butterfly open, let the fuel flow. There's 2 on the oxidizer line and 2 on the fuel line. Now this is a hypergolic reaction. Hypergolic means ignites on contact. You don't need a fuse, igniter, or spark plug to launch this thing. When the fuel comes in contact with the oxidizer, this thing takes off. One of them has a locking mechanism. If this one can't open, none of them can open. The only way to open it is to put that combination in. If you go out there and manually try to open it, there's an explosive charge. This thing will melt. The missile will never work. You need the combination. We don't have it. The base doesn't have it. Pentagon has it. You'll only ever see this code if it's an actual order to launch this thing. That's the only time. Clockwise, hold it for 5 seconds until I tell you let it go.
3, 2, 1, launch.
All right, good to go. You can let go. You did what the Air Force paid you for. You've just joined World War III, however. If the president calls right now, there's no stopping this thing, folks. There's no oops button, there's no self-destruct. This thing is going, unless there's a problem. The next light, first light is launch enabled. That means it's checked, everything's a go. Second light, batteries activated. There's 2 batteries on that missile being force-fed electrolyte for the first time. Takes 28 seconds to fill them. Once it's powered up, we get ABS power. That means it's on its own. It's making its own electricity. It doesn't need help from the control center anymore. Silo soft. The door just lifted up, slid open, went through the tipsy, set off the alarm. The silo is wide open now. The next light is guidance go. The guidance computer is talking to this thing called the MAGAC for the last time. Make sure it knows where it's going, how to get there, what to do once it gets there. Fire engines, the butterfly valves are open, the two fuels are mixed. That thing is lit up. Engulfed in flames out there. All your fire alarms are going off, Captain. When the missile gets to 77% of its full thrust, the four explosive bolts that hold it down explode. And the Titan II starts lumbering up out of the hull. And then 2 seconds later, Captain, liftoff. It's gone. 58 seconds, folks. That's all it takes. 58 seconds to end the world. Now, the previous missile, Titan I, took 30 minutes to launch. Once they got the message, you would have to fill it up with fuel, raise it on an elevator out of the ground, try to launch it. We only have 5 minutes before one's going to hit us. Not a great deterrent. As long as we can keep that at 60 degrees, that fuel will stay stable indefinitely, ready to go at a moment's notice. It only took 3 minutes from the time you got that message to the time this actually left. That only gives us 2 minutes to say our prayers down here, Captain. Brace for impact, right? The missile, however, is on its way. It's on its way to Target 2. Target 2 was the default target for this silo. This missile was always aimed at Target 2 for 20 years. Target 2 was top secret in 1963. It's still top secret today, because chances are something is still aimed at Target 2. You know what's a Target 2, Captain?
Don't know it.
No, he doesn't. Neither did we. We had one of the highest top secret clearances you could possibly get from the American government to be down here and do this job. We did not have a need to know. They didn't want us to know. This thing may destroy 10 million lives in a half hour. They didn't want to put that burden on us. They didn't want anything to keep us from turning those keys. As a crew member, I can honestly tell you, we never talked about it. We didn't even think about where this thing was going. We didn't want to know. All we know is what happens when we get there. This thing's going 800 miles into space, over the North Pole, 3 times higher than the space station sits. It's going to hit its apogee, and it's going to start falling. Up to 6,500 miles away, it's going to land on Target 2. Target 2 is set at a ground burst. Ground burst is the original bunker buster. We're going to dig a big hole. We're going to dig out a missile silo, a command and control center, maybe even a bunker under the Kremlin. Who knows? This thing's going to detonate right before it hits the ground. It's instantaneously going to blow a hole in the ground, 3/4 of a mile wide, 450 feet deep, and completely vaporize whatever happened up in there. I mean vaporized, gone, like it never existed. Now, we could have been ordered to change our target to either 1 or 3, and switch from a ground burst to an air burst. An air burst is much, much worse. Air burst is retaliation for the Soviets starting this thing in the first place. The 54 Titan IIs with the 9 million tons of TNT on board are going to completely destroy 54 of the Soviets' largest cities. This thing detonates 14,000 feet above the land. In a millionth of a second is going to produce a 3-mile wide fireball, 10 million degrees, brighter than 100 suns. And then it's 10 times the speed of sound. The shock wave, the blast wave, and the heat wave are going to travel out, and they're going to completely decimate 900 square miles of Earth. 900 square miles of Earth is a city 30 miles across. That's any city on the globe. LA, Washington, Beijing, Moscow, you name it. Gone. Completely gone. Everybody in it. Completely gone. Miles and miles beyond that. Fires are raging. Homes are burning. People are dropping from the radiation. It's a devastating, devastating weapon. The world has never seen anything like this before. Never been used. Thank God.
Yeah.
The good news is, we never turned the keys. We never got the order to turn the keys. This is what America thought we needed to keep the Soviets at bay. For 24 years, the Titan II missile is America's biggest, baddest deterrent, and all the men and women that served down here, we did our job. We accomplished our mission, our goal. Our goal is keeping the peace around the world. Peace through deterrence. There's still machines and people doing it to this day. We just don't call it the Cold War anymore. Captain, that's yours. Deputy, that's yours. Can you read what it says in red?
I turned the key.
Deputy? You turned the key, you certainly did. You did your job. Now that you've admitted it, you're on the hook for this though. The crews we sent down to Vandenberg to test launch these, we reported back that we wouldn't have felt it or heard it in the air. That's how isolated we are from that thing. So we gotta go make sure it's still there, Captain. I don't know how much coin you got, but that's $2.5 million. 1960s money. All right, folks, we're gonna head all the way down. space program, precursor to Apollo. You all heard of Neil Armstrong, right? First man on the moon. He took his first ride into space on a Titan II missile named Gemini 8. We call it a missile because we put a bomb on it. NASA put people on it. It's a rocket ship, like any other rocket ship. It's a medium launch vehicle. This thing was built to last 7 years. We got 24 years as America's biggest deterrent, and then another 16 years of launching satellites into space. The 2 Viking missions to Mars in the 70s were on Titan. The 2 Voyager missions in the 70s. One to Saturn, one to Jupiter. They both went on Titan. The last launch of one of these was October 2003. We got 40 years out of this airframe. 40 years, and it cost us $2.5 million, which was incredible. When does America ever get its money's worth when they buy something like this? Never. Now, we really can't get an idea of how big this thing actually is standing next to it. We opened the silo halfway. We're going to be able to look down upon it. We're going to see all 103 feet of the Titan II, all the way down in this big silver donut. It's called the thrust mount. That's what those explosive bolts hold the missile to. And then the engines are up there, and we'll finish the tour upstairs. So if you follow me out, when you get upstairs, outside, wait for me, and we'll finish up, all right? Is this one on the oil derrick. That's not going to survive either. So the antenna in front of it, the white pole, sits in its own 70-foot deep powder silo with 10-foot thick walls. That has a backup over the corner, still in the ground, still covered over. That round thing looks like an egg beater. Ultra low frequency, highly survivable antenna. It's buried in the ground. You get this signal through the ground instead of the air, and it's a hard copy printout. You're definitely going to get that signal. And then that little nose cone popping out of the ground over near the air conditioner, that talks to the doomsday plane. That plane spools out 5 miles of wire behind it, drags it across America, broadcasting out the launch codes. Look. So in order to become a museum, we made a deal with the Soviets. They also have a museum. It's in Ukraine. It's a comparable silo. It has a comparable missile. Only they have a 20 megaton bomb on it instead of the 9 we have. America nicknamed that missile Satan. But they didn't put it back in the ground. They just kind of laid it on the ground. So we put ours back in where it belongs. We opened the door halfway. We put these blocks on the railroad tracks and rides on so they can see it can't open it any further. Where the pyramid is, we put a glass dome over the open half. And when we dropped the missile back in, we had to cut a hole in the re-entry vehicle. So their satellites can look down there, even to this day, to make sure we haven't been sneaky and put a bomb back in this thing and made it operational. So that's where you want to go. Either side of that pyramid is a viewing stand. Because the sun's out, you have to put your hands right on the glass, or your camera right on the glass. You got a great picture, all 103 feet of that Titan II, all the way down to the thrust mount. After that, the engines are out there. There's a shed. We took the first, second stage, all the vernier motors. We put them over there for you to look at. This thing's going 800 miles into space. Remember the space shuttle engines? They were huge, right? You can almost wrap your arms around these things. Incredible technology for the 1960s. After that, you can go anywhere you want out here. Just can't go back downstairs. When you're through, go through the last door on the left. If you have any questions, I'll be in there manning the desk. I want to thank my captain, my deputy, and everybody else for coming out. Hope you folks enjoyed the tour today. Have a good day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.